Okay, and welcome back to the next response video. The feedback I got from the last one has been overwhelming and effective. First, it's given voice to people who have been misled, exploited, or harmed by the snake oil salesman. Many people have come forward, some sharing public comments, others privately recording statements about the manipulations they or their seafood experience at the hands of the salesman. This has been shocking to say the least, just by the numbers. I knew it was bad, but I've got easily over 2 or 3 hours worth of footage now to go through and share with people if need be. Secondly, and just as important, is that this whole series has began a catalyzation process of more serious discussions around the real history and research of Wing Chun Kyun. For the first time, as far as I can remember actually, the right questions are being asked. The veil is lifted and the mythology and all the lies are all crumbling down now. Of course, the snake oil salesman has many faithful zealots, and that's to be expected. People have invested time, money, and personal belief in many of his narratives, and they've built their identity on his lies. Deprogramming this is going to take time, but that isn't my job. I'm not here to convince the cult. I'm here to lay out the facts to those who are willing to listen and let them decide what reality really looks like. However, there are still those who are comfortable in the fantasy, which I understand, and as such have sent me many comments and private messages, mainly focused on things like the creation of the logo that I spoke about in the previous video. Apparently, it's unsettling to them that a man that they've been told to hate, me in this instance, is the same man whose design they have to wear on their body day in and day out. Of course, who would like that? But the facts are the facts, and I did what I did. So, I'm sorry, I suppose, although at the time it was a pretty sweet idea for a logo. So you're welcome. I thought that this may be an opportune time to maybe recount the story of that trip when I went to go see Snakeio in Amsterdam. I'm going to sound old when I say this, but times were different back in those early 2000s. Information was very difficult to come by, particularly in the lineage that we were under. However, there was whispers of a particular practitioner who actually had the entire system and was willing to share it with everybody. That person was the snake oil salesman, and he was living in Amsterdam at the time. It was politically very difficult to maneuver outside of the UK and learn the system to its fullest. So certain measures had to be taken. It's a funny story actually. I'll have to recount it at a different time. Before continuing, I must admit that my memory for these kind of things is not the best. When it comes to martial arts, I'm sharp. But when it comes to trivial things and these details, I like to make sure that I've got all my facts correct. So I didn't go alone to Amsterdam. There was someone else that was with me when this whole logo situation went down, and that is one Sifu Sunny Riyat. So rather than relying solely on my own recollection, I gave Sunny a quick call just to give me his rendition of what went down. Well, look, what can you remember, right, of that first trip that we took to Amsterdam and to see Snakeio, and that because you got better memory than me with these kind of things, right? Tell me what you remember of that situation. Who was there? What happened? How it went down?
It was actually a really good trip. I remember it was a good trip. First time for myself, Amsterdam. Met Sergio. It was an interesting trip. We got to do some really cool training. Sergio took us to this restaurant, and this breakfast restaurant was really cool because they had this sort of Dutch way of doing breakfast with toast and frying the egg on the toast. And he recommended it. It was actually really good. I'm not gonna lie, I was munching away.
That's good to remember the food part. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That was great actually. I think there was a few of us actually. There was yourself, myself, the gentleman, as we were discussing. I think there were two other coaches there as well. Two of his guys he was training at the time. I think it was apologies for if I don't mispronounce it, Tana and Grazia, Italian. Oh, sorry, if I mispronounce it. Really nice people, really nice individuals, and yeah, basically we were sitting at a table.
Snakeio, right?
Sorry,
it was me, you, Graziano, Tana, and Snakeio at this table, right?
yeah. It was a good meetup actually, and what happened was there was a nice little talk. We were talking about like he was very interested in the marketing side of things because at the time he had lineages of and I think it's Andrew Hoffman in his school, and he was doing Wing Chun at the time, and he was really interested in this other hall in Amsterdam. He was saying he wants to take it, he wants to improve business and stuff like that, and they use these. Do you remember the red leaflet I brought?
Brother,
there was this.
Don't you worry.
There was this red leaflet which had its really unique signs, like of the circles and triangles, like the. There you go.
Yeah, so
there you go.
Yeah, right. So I rang Paul, and he knows about this whole story about what happened in the logo and everything. And luckily, he still had the.
Yeah, we showed those, and we loved it. And we were telling about the ideas, and like we're just brainstorming. Everyone's hitting ideas and talking stuff. It was cool. And I remember you grabbing a tissue, and as I'm eating away, chomping away, everyone's talking. Sergio was really interested in the ideas. He was like really listening sharp. And I remember you just drawing something on a paper, and you kind of like drew the two shapes and you connected them. And then I think when you showed it to Sergio, he looked at it, and I remember his eyes were just like something just hit, like a spark. And we were talking about the body and how martial arts affects the mind and all sorts of stuff. It was a really nice talk. We had a real nice talk, and we were just like, so can you see the emphasis of the triangle and this and another? It was just a nice talk. Had a great breakfast. He was really happy after that.
Well, as you can see, the timeline places the logo design at the time that Sunny and I were in Amsterdam. But that brings on another question that I'm sure people are going to ask, and that is, why even help somebody like Snakeio with anything, give him any information that we had, the marketing material, designing the logo, etc., when, I profess that he is this diabolical person? Well, let's be all the way honest. The first time that I met Snakeio, we actually had a great time. Communication was easy. He was very generous with his information. He assigned 2 of his master students, Graziano and Tana, to pretty much be around us when we were training so they could demonstrate. It was all very, very cool. Despite what I'd heard about him, because I'd heard some very disparaging things which shaped the way that I initially interacted with him, I needed to see for myself, and on first look, I quite liked him actually. Despite how he is now, at the time, this individual was quite complimentary about mine and Sunny's skills, especially when it came to practical usage of Wing Chun Kuen and in combat, mainly in sparring and things like this. You see, he confided in me that day that none of his students were really fighters, right? Which I get. People do martial arts for different reasons, self-defense, etc. But he really wanted that kind of particular subset of people within his school. And because of how well we were treated the first time we were there, I offered to, because I was getting ready for a fight, to actually promote him and his organization when I fought by putting his logo on my shorts. Anything really I could offer of any value, at least I thought, to him at that time. Well, it wasn't long until I saw some cracks in his behavior, and I just thought it's probably not the best idea for me to be associated with this person, put his logo on my shorts, etc. Plus, the team that I was with didn't really appreciate me doing that, obviously because I'd only spent 1 weekend with this guy and I was training for years at another place. So I got it, and I was just a young kid not thinking straight. But that's how that went down. We did see each other one more time, and I had Sunny with me as well. But after that second trip, I'd seen all I needed to see. He revealed a very different side of himself, and it wasn't for me. So from there, I was out. And it wasn't many years, it was, I think maybe at least a decade or so, until I saw him again in Crawley at my friend's school. You see, my friend had assured me that this person had seen the error of his ways. He was quite different now, and it'll be worth, for his sake, to try and mend some bridges, because we were both very important people in my friend's life, so he didn't want us at odds or to avoid each other at seminars and things like that, which is fair enough. I wasn't an angel in my past, so everybody deserves a second and sometimes a third chance. I thought I'd give it a shot, and I went over and I met Snakeio, but we got talking about things, and once again, despite his new push for this internal training, it became clear that this fighting element, the combat element, still wasn't there. And I'd said to him, because I felt bad about cutting contact last time, that if need be, I'm completely cool because I'm still competing. If you want that side of your organization built and promoted, let's do it. I can help you do that. But once again, it wasn't long until, well, he basically betrayed my friend and sabotaged his business and tried to destroy his organization. And I thought, well, nothing's changed. In fact, he's even worse than before. So I dodged a bullet for a second time. And yeah, I don't think I'm going to want to link my name to his. So that's out the way. Let's get to the claims that Snakeio has made in his last video, namely the one about internal martial arts and whether or not they're fake. Now, that's a bold claim. Let's not forget the etymology over here. Martial comes from Mars, the Roman god of war. Wushu literally means martial methods, not philosophy, not dance, methods of war. While Wudang and Ermei are sacred mountains with strong religious heritages, the idea that fully formed martial arts systems originated there in pre-Christian times is pure fantasy, not backed up by any data, research, or any literature. It's well known in academic circles that the Wudang martial arts in particular are a much later invention. There's no archaeological or textual evidence that these systems existed in their current form prior to the Ming Dynasty. Sources like Stanley Henning and Peter Law clarify this. Wudang arts were largely constructed retrospectively, tying in Taoist cosmology to physical movement after martial arts had already developed elsewhere. False. The internal-external division is not ancient, it's modern rebranding. During the late imperial China, martial arts were mainly stigmatized. Practitioners were relegated to the social standing of the jianghu, or the lowest rung of the social ladder, at the same level as thieves and rapists and murderers. Essentially, practitioners reframed martial practice using Confucian, Taoist and Buddhist vocabulary to gain respectability so that people wouldn't spit on them in the street. The earliest mention of internal martial practices appears in Huang's book, this one right here. But the distinction in this book made by Huang was ideological, not technical. The famous general Qi Jinquan's treatise on martial arts is considered the oldest book of its type. It was written in the 16th century and makes no reference to internal versus external styles. So that brings us to the next logical question. Snakeio has referenced books and research of ancient internal methods. Which books? Which research? There's nothing that supports that claim that the current internal practices were transmitted unchanged from ancient times. He then goes on to appeal tales from the Qing's imperial court as proof. But let's clarify. Yang Luchan, the founder of Yang Tai Chi, was initially a Chen-style practitioner. The meditated soft forms we associate with Tai Chi today was developed by his son, and more so by his grandson, Yang Chengfu, in the early 20th century. Even the so-called Tai Chi classics are not ancient. They originate from the mid-19th century and are commonly known as the salt shop manuals. Their mythos was constructed, not inherited. That is, these are essentially modern books that have a interesting story attached to them to make them feel and look older than they actually are. But this is just to add to their legend and myth. Well, this is yet another straw man by the snake oil salesman. I did not claim that Lord Taiwan was educated or not. I simply made the statement that martial arts historically had come from the working class, the peasant class, the farmers, etc. It's not that these people were stupid or anything like that, merely that they were not academically educated or particularly literate. That's a socio-historical observation, not a personal insult, and a conclusion that one who actually studied the history of martial arts in China would come to also. When I first visited the Law Village with Mr. Tam, incidentally the same source that provides Snakeio and his circle of friends with information also, Mr. Tam told us there was no concrete evidence of Lord Taiwan's scholarly or official accomplishments. Now it's possible that Lord Taiwan was highly educated, but even true, so what? That doesn't change the broader pattern of martial arts being shaped by those on society's margins, labourers, militias, soldiers, but not elites. In fact, there are many prevalent intellectuals in the spread and development of Wing Chun Kyun, namely people such as Yip Man and UK San, who were indeed educated, wealthy, but came much later in the 18th to 20th century. Moreover, the earliest martial records predate them by centuries and show no connection to energy cultivation but to battlefield application. And whilst on the subject of cultivation, this word that gets bandied around recklessly nowadays, what does that even mean in general and to the snake oil salesman? Are we discussing physical health here, mental stability, spiritual elevation? These are legitimate goals, but they don't require fantasy or pseudoscience. Moreover, given the nature of the interactions with the snake oil salesman, with myself and with other people, I find that all of those attributes he professes these cultivations develop, he lacks. However, real martial arts training offers all of these through rigorous, reliable practice. Physical strength, sharp reflexes, clear intent, these attributes transform both the body and the mind. In fact, many of the high-level internal martial artists that people look up to nowadays have come from a significant and prolonged period of what some people term as external martial arts. There is a stark contrast between real martial arts training and those professing to be of this internal higher nature. By the way, it's important to note that if you go to the mainland, if you go to China, this designation of internal and external martial arts, it doesn't really exist. These styles belong in a sliding scale and can identify more as one or the other depending on the individual actually applying the skills. But really, this idea is quite nonsensical to the Chinese themselves. They view the martial arts as just that, a combination of the internal and external, the martial, destruction, and the art, the creation. The clue's in the name. Instead of a holistic whole martial arts system, what we see with many of these internalists is degeneration, physically, technically, and ethically, in my experience. Practitioners of this ilk tend to often appear soft, out of shape, and mentally fragile. Their skills are untestable, their bodies are untrained, and when life presents actual pressure, the mystical facade crumbles. Why? Because cultivation without confrontation is an illusion. It's quite similar to what I've seen in the yoga circles and the meditation circles, in fact. These internalists tend to talk in this non-committal fashion, in platitudes, and have this almost superiority complex. They seem quiet and relaxed and have that voice, the yoga voice. Then what happens? They take this meditative state, they've just wowed you with their push hands. And then they go outside and they sit in their car and then they drive. And then somebody cuts them up on the road and they will flip out. They will go absolutely nuts over the smallest thing because they're able to maintain their state in the environment of their choosing. But when out in the big wide world, they always seem to crumble. They cannot deal with the stress because what stress, apart from the one they're subjecting themselves to in their own mind, have they really toughened themselves up against? You see, resilience and toughness is something that has to be earned through proper, correct martial arts training. Something that those who indulge in actual martial arts practice know all too well. Proper martial arts, real martial arts, whether you want to call them internal or external, share common traits: humility, adaptability, resilience, and clarity. They don't talk endlessly about etherical energy. They move with it. They don't need legends. They have lineage through lived experience. No. When the snake oil salesman asks, are internal martial arts fake? Well, no. It's just his presentation of them that is. Train for truth, not tales. Whenever you're getting stuck and misled and confused in the quagmire of characters like this and the narratives they spin, just remember, energy never lies, but Snakeio always will.